All right. Rare Sunday show.
Sunday.
It's Monday.
Sunday.
No, it's not. This time it's not
It's
Monday.
Monday. Hey, we're Power and Speed, 908-751-0211. All you fools out there listening on Sunday,
Sunday.
give us a call.
And, but share us more than anything, but like us on Facebook, iTunes, whatnot. Yada, yada. But share.
Okay. We got Fireman Jeff here today.
Yo.
What's up, buddy?
Howdy.
You've got some some SS stories.
Ugh.
It always goes hand in hand,
Yeah.
And you say SS, and you probably run into this too. Like when I was trying to research some of the things about your car, God forbid you type in like 2014 SS. It's everything. It's a Camaro.
Yes.
You can't find anything.
You got to type in Holden.
Yeah, I did that, but then it's not an SS. Then it's what is it?
Right. It's got a different computer and everything
the
else.
LaGrange?
No, it's a Commodore.
Commodore.
And there's VF, VE. I don't know.
I thought his was the big car. It's the Grange over there.
No. So I don't know how many people are going to be online today listening because it is a Sunday.
Tad, how many people?
Well, so far we got 4.
Stellar.
So we're down like 600%.
Yeah, like what do we normally have? Like 87?
Yeah.
Well, this is a surprise show, so it's like we got to let them ramp in.
Yeah, and we didn't.
Another one just showed up.
We didn't really publicize it a lot, but I mean, this was a makeup. This was a makeup from a studio fuck up. We changed the router and had a screw up. This phone system didn't work. The other phone systems did. And poor Tony Palo was calling in and nothing was working.
Nope.
Couldn't hear him. So we had to bail, but you're on vacation starting, I guess, when did it start? Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to Cape May.
Yeah, tonight.
Ugh. So it was either this or nothing.
Yeah, and we had to do it because we can't be missing 2 shows in a row.
No, and then
Our people will kill us.
and then I've been
They'll bail.
extremely busy with accounting stuff,
Yep.
and I think this was all my fault. I can't blame anybody. I don't think
I like that.
I don't think it's Libsyn. I don't think it's anybody. I think I got done getting the show ready to publish, and I just never pushed the button when I walked away.
Yeah, somebody was complaining about that too.
Yeah, I
Which
think
one?
The last one that we did.
116, right?
Oh, you
116.
didn't even publish it?
No,
I didn't even notice.
I think what happened. If you don't listen to our own show, I mean, you don't know.
Well, I was there when we did it, I think.
Yeah, but
I was half here. Anyway.
But I think I was thinking about something, and I remember looking at the screen, and I remember everything about it, and I just don't think I ever hit the button when I got done. So we'll get both of them up. I'll try to have both of them up tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, somebody was mentioning it's great when he does it like that. Then you can just sit back and listen for a few hours.
Yeah,
Mike's fault.
my fault. So
Mike's fault.
But we did verify the phone system. That has now been put into our pre-show checklist. So no issues.
Nope.
Thomas,
Did you put corn on the cob into the pre-show checklist?
I
And
did make.
it was
we
damn
should
good.
have been live before.
Why?
Because
pregame.
they would have thought we were totally
Nuts.
R word.
R word, really?
The sea salt on the corn and how long to boil
Yeah,
the
we're talking
corn.
about corn and baked potatoes and God.
Don't even get me started
It was
on
like
toasters.
fucking, it was fucking diners, drive-ins, and dives. Yeah, I know. They don't even get you started on toasters.
Toasters is a very complex issue.
Yeah, it is.
That's
Well, everybody that comes here gets to know, always talks about, yeah, he showed me his toaster and
My God.
it's a complex issue for me. What can I tell you? Tom,
Yes.
you have
Mike.
some information about upcoming shows, and we've got,
Oh, I made that all up. I was just fucking with you.
yeah. Well, why don't you tell the people your story then that you're making up? Because to me, this is, all our past shows have been fantastic, I think. I mean, with the guests. This one is one that not only is it a great guest, but it's a big part of Turbo history.
Yeah, and a legend.
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking to Kenny Duttweiler tomorrow. Our buddy Shane T. I know Kenny a little bit, but Shane knows him very well, and Shane hooked it up. So shout out to Shane. He's the bomb.
Great guy.
Yeah, but I'm going to talk to Kenny tomorrow, and hopefully he'll be good for next weekend. Next weekend. Sorry, next Monday. We're still working on Proline. Get them in for the Monday after, maybe.
Okay.
So we got some solid people coming.
And there's a couple others that I know about.
Yep.
That Shane had sent
Yep.
my direction
Yep.
to, and a couple from Paul.
Yep.
I think they'll all be real good.
Yep. And we got to get Paul back in.
We probably should. We should probably have him.
We
after Tony.
we actually should because
I think he's got a lot to talk about.
He does. He talk about anything with him.
he posts a lot. So
and he's funny, and he's got that new romper. So, I mean, did you see the video he posted?
No, I haven't been on Facebook. at all.
My God.
Oh, I think I saw
He
that
posted
one.
a guy
It was
working out.
disturbing.
Yeah, in some kind of romper type deal with no ass in it. And they're telling the guy, hey, do a squat. And he does. And, it's disturbing.
God.
I mean, if somebody could just put, Photoshop Paul's head in there, it'd be crazy.
Well, he does have one now.
I know. If we keep talking about it, we might get stunned one day.
All right, let's. I don't think we really talked about your car, Jeff, too much, but it's in the car.
Yes.
It runs.
Yes.
And I will tell you, I don't think anybody won the Powerball this
No.
past week. So
Good.
it's probably going to be like 600 million.
I think
or
it's
something.
575 now. We should all put in before we leave. The four of us.
I don't buy them, all the time. Like if they're
Just when
like small, I buy them when they start to come up.
Floods like that.
Like anything over like 100. Because you can kind
Yeah,
of
because what are you going to do with 50 million?
Jackass.
Jackass.
Pocket change.
as he says, it's a tax on the
Kidding.
stupid,
So I was looking at all that. Jeff, you should go buy a ticket because I have never, ever in my life seen anyone have what you had fail in the lifter department and not screw something up.
I know.
So Jeff takes his car to the track, makes all kinds of racket, valve train frequency. When you know what you're listening for an engine, you can tell the frequency, the speed. And I said, wow, so that sounds really weird. Now I'm listening on a cell phone, with the video. And I said, I don't know, man, you got to look at this. He's got one rocker that's loose, probably 200, 300 of lash.
More like 5.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but it was substantial. I was like, oh man, that wheel's gone. That whole thing, that's going to be a god-awful fucking mess. Brand new pistons, shit falling down on them, everything. I said, this is going to be a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And we took it apart. And Jeff, tell people what you found because I can't even believe it. Tell them about the little disc. And I was like, the only thing that I could think of, Jeff.
The only thing that I pulled out was just a little flat piece of metal. And I thought for sure that the piston smashed something or something came apart or a bearing, took a shit or whatever. And it turned out to just be a little piece inside the lifter.
Little disc that sits under the lifter.
Under the cup.
Apparently, he had something go wrong in the top side of the lifter because he had a mishap with a gear change and going the wrong direction. So it forced it into a drastic over rev situation. That's why you initially got the heads to me to change a valve and everything else in springs. So that lifter managed to get hurt, and it actually popped the seat like sideways in the lifter, and the push rod went down next to the cup, and nothing came apart.
And nothing else happened.
Nope.
It's crazy.
Nope.
I can't even.
Absolutely
I
It's
have
literally crazy.
never seen that before in my life. And I said, Jeff, if that happened, I don't even know what. I mean, maybe it's common with LSs. I don't work on these.
I
things
don't know
all the time.
either.
No.
But usually what'll happen is it'll hang up, make the push rod a half inch longer, hit a piston, break that piston, put a hole in the block,
Yeah.
smoke, crash the car.
Or
Sorry, is that the extreme?
getting a little too far there. Or if it's a wheel, you've got a junk camshaft.
Yeah.
Probably I've seen blocks have the side of them knocked out.
Yeah.
When a lifter gets hung up.
But if you're lucky, it just shits all the bearings. You got to take the whole thing apart.
Whole thing apart. You have the material that transfers to the bottom of the pistons.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a fucking mess. It is the most aggravating thing in an engine to fail. And then what makes it even worse with these LS things, and this kind of sucks, you can't get the lifters out unless you get the fucking head off.
Yeah.
Right.
That sucks.
That does suck.
But
There is
it's
a but.
not bad taking the heads off that car.
You obviously are a hell of a lot more ambitious than I
Yeah,
am.
Well,
really.
He's like the sloppy mechanic. He just reuses the head gaskets, keep on going through it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I got to give Jeff all the credit in the world. This guy works hard. Like, he'll call me up and say, okay, I got both heads off. I got the lifter out. I mean, I'm like, dude, how did you do that? He could work at GM.
Practice
fixing
makes
these
perfect,
things.
Hey, he puts his head down and works.
That's it.
All right. So now you're into figuring out the fuel pump thing. I actually sent a request just to see if, the problem is when you ask people to come on the show cold, like if nobody makes an introduction,
Right.
they see something and they think, oh, look at these guys. They think like magazine stuff. Like they're going to come on here and it's going to be, we're going to hit them up for a sponsorship or like, yeah, you can be on the show, but you give us $5,000. It's not like that.
No, it's like 2,500.
Yeah. For performance, makes all kinds of stuff, and you found another company. What's the name of it? I can't remember.
Livernois?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Livernois.
Yep.
Yeah. So they make the same kind of stuff that's all drop-in stuff. So you're in the process of doing this. I think it makes the most sense to go to something where you could just transition to E85 easily, so that your pump system was good enough.
Does Livernois have a good kit? Because they're actually doing a motor with our stuff we're doing a thing with Magnuson. And I just sent parts up to Michigan, and Livernois is doing the motor.
That's what I'm trying to find out now.
All right, well, let me know. If I could help.
Has it, and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I know a guy.
You know a guy. We're from New Jersey. We always know a guy.
Of course.
All right.
Forget about it.
Let's bring Tony in. Tony's on hold.
Tony.
What's up, guys?
Wow, it works this time.
Can you hear me this time?
Yeah, man, we can. And again, our apologies for the kind of a shit show that it was. And also, thank you for coming on a Sunday. It's good to have you. What's going on?
Oh, Sunday. Spent the day out on the lake and try not to drink too much so I could do this show.
Oh, good. Well, we appreciate that. You can get back to drinking in a little while. So we got a lot to talk about. We got some kind of technical issue going on right now, of course. But
of course.
No, it's Jeff's headphones.
Jeff's headphones.
He'll be all right.
Well, Jeff, you're gonna have to. Mike's gonna sign the rest of the show to you.
Yeah, Tony, I'm really sorry about that. We did a router upgrade, and it was just a train wreck. I didn't expect it, and I know I am absolutely wild about things not working, and that just made me friggin' nuts. But yeah, so
bound to happen eventually.
Yeah, just our luck.
Well, listen, you got the floor, man. There's no your partner's home, probably riding his 4-wheeler or playing with the shock dyno or something. So he's not going to be talking over you this time. So we get
He's
to hear.
probably on Facebook Live doing something right now.
He
Yeah,
is
right?
the smartest crazy person I have ever met. I mean, the stuff that he.
I thought you said the craziest smart person.
You could be
before,
either
yeah.
way. I can't believe the stuff the level of detail like he's putting into the shock absorbers it's all on education, but my God.
Yeah. So
Yeah. He's got you guys fooled.
So Mike's got a bunch of questions. We got a bunch of questions. So let's get after
Shoot.
it. Mike?
Well, let's start here. I read, and anybody that's been to your website, and I guess it's actually t1racedevelopment.com, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I read the about, but why don't you give us like a brief history? Like, cause I picked up that you've always been an import guy, that's kind of where you came from, and kind of tell us how you got here from the car side, from the import side.
Yep. So when I was growing up, I was really into BMX bikes, and I really didn't care about cars at all. And when I turned 16, I bought a car so I could take my bike other places to ride. And when I was 17, I started, some other friends started, being into cars. And I was like, all right, this looks kind of cool. Let's play with it. And I bought a Honda Civic when I was in senior in high school. And I didn't know how to drive a manual transmission, so I bought an automatic. And I put the intake and the header and the exhaust, and the magazine said it was going to pick up 47 horsepower or something, and I learned pretty quickly that an automatic 4-cylinder is just not going to be fast at all.
Yep.
And so my friend's car was faster, so I had to buy something different. So I bought an Integra, and that's just where it all started. I got a job at Jotech Motorsports when I was in high school. And that's all I've done since, play with cars.
So you worked for Kenny?
Yeah, 7 years there.
Is he? I thought he was like 25 years old his whole life. So he's
Asian. They don't age.
That's true. I forgot about that. So
no, I when I started there, I had general mechanical ability, but I didn't really know anything about cars. I didn't know what turbos were. I didn't know how turbos worked. And, kind of none of us did there. But in that age, we were putting on intakes and headers and springs and fucking blue headlight bulbs, like you didn't have to know anything. So as things evolved, I got to learn, a little bit at a time rather than, with where technology is today. If you decided, I want to learn this, I mean, it's a steep curve. There's a lot to know. But when I started, it was in my little world, it was very basic. And, we would go to the dyno and adjust fuel pressure and cam gears. I mean, that was all we did.
Wow. So that's like the beginning that's like the caveman era of this stuff.
Yeah, that was when fuel injection was new as far as aftermarket stuff goes. I mean, I remember the first tunable fuel injection computer I worked with was the Gen 6 DFI, which was, if you had to open it now, it's pretty bad. I mean, you would go to the fuel map and wait 20 seconds while it populated these 16 cells. I mean, it was just silly.
That's actually funny. But I remember them too. I remember that. So then you did you not race under the Joe Tech banner? Is that where you started racing?
So I crew chiefed for Kenny's car when we started racing the Civic. And, I did all the fabrication. I was doing the engine building, doing the tuning stuff, and crew chiefing for that car. And when the NHRA Sport Compact stuff allowed methanol, we were like, all right, well, everybody's going methanol. We need to go methanol. We don't know anything about it. And Bob Norwood's kind of in our general vicinity. And Norwood said, hey, I'll help you guys get a Motec put on the car. We'll get it converted over to methanol, and we'll do all that. And so he did. And he was, part of the race team for the next year or so. And, I mean, we all learned a lot in that year converting the car over. And then I guess maybe a year after that or so, Bob said, I want to build some race cars, and I need somebody to fabricate the chassis stuff. I want you to come work for me. So I left and went to work for Bob for a couple of years because it was a lot more money than I was making at Joe Tech. And then started T1 in 2005.
And the rest is history, as it were.
Now, did T1 go like directly into GTRs, or is there still an import theme across, or is it like more exclusively GTRs at this point?
So when I started doing it, I had almost 10 years in the Honda performance industry. So I knew a lot about them. I had a lot of clientele. That was my market. So when I started, it was primarily doing Hondas, but the reality was when you start a business, you're going to do whatever comes through the door, assuming you're not packed with work. So I would do custom turbo kits, fabrication, you need something welded, whatever, bring it in, I would do it. And then in 2010, I bought what is now my race GTR, and I bought it because I loved the car and I could finally afford one. And I drove it home from the dealership, and I literally drove it home and went, this thing is perfect. I'm not going to touch it. I had zero plans of getting into GTR performance stuff. I just wanted a nice car I could enjoy. So 2 weeks after I got it was the Texas Mile, and I had no plans to go. But one of my buddies had a spot, and his car was broken. He's like, if you want to take my spot, you can. I'm like, all right, that sounds cool, but I don't want to race it stock. So if I'm going to take it out there, I might as well build exhaust and put it on ethanol and do all this stuff. So we did, and I took it out there. It went 183 miles an hour. And it went from being, over the next 4 years or so, it went from being this, completely stock car to many different levels of street car. I had about 1,600 horsepower, and then I was like, you know what? We're just going to call this thing a race car, and then went bigger turbos, and here we are.
How fast was it at 1,600? I'm sure you remember.
I don't think I ever had it. We do a lot of the Texas Invitational stuff. It's in my backyard.
Yep.
So between the Texas Invitational and the half-mile stuff and the car being broken in between races normally, I don't even think I had it at the drag strip. Actually, I did. I took it out one time when it was making 1,600 or so, and that was when people were first starting to run slicks on the GTR. And I had slicks on the rear and regular 20-inch street tires on the front. And I quickly learned that is a bad combo. I almost crashed it a couple passes and said, let's stop racing this thing. So, with what we had back then as far as the computer technology goes and strategies we were using, it probably would have been a 850 car or so, where today that same power, we're getting 770, 780s out of them.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah.
How much the car has progressed. So
it was, I guess, probably 2011 or so. We started getting a lot of GTR work, and it got to a point where I still had the Integra. I was racing the Integra, and I'm like, what? I don't want to work on Hondas anymore. I've got GTR opportunities, so it doesn't make sense to work on the Honda anymore. So we stopped working on the Hondas. Went to exclusive GTR work. I sold the Integra to a buddy of mine, and then that's all we've done since then. Is all we work on is GTRs.
And I'm not trying to knock anybody, but it's probably a better clientele.
Yeah.
I mean,
Slightly, yeah.
The kid that got the $1,200 Honda from Craigslist isn't really comparable to the GTR guy. So I think
I built the Integra was it was a leader in its class when I was racing it, and it had all the good shit on there, tilt and carbon clutch and Motec dash and Motec ECU. I mean, it was all the good stuff, and not once, and I knew it was never going to happen, was somebody going to walk in the door and say, I want you to build me one of those.
Yeah.
Right? Like, your car, that's what I want. But that's happened 20 times with the GTR.
Yep.
So it's definitely a very different crowd.
Yeah, definitely the right business model, or the better choice in business models.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the thing that I was impressed about, and I talked to you about it briefly on Facebook, is I watched your car on the dyno that you guys have. And that to me was amazing. I mean, and maybe people are going to be like, Mike, you're an idiot. You've never seen a hub dyno before? No. I mean, I got to watch that, and it was the way that I tend to describe things that look like they work well is effortless. Like it just does what it's supposed to do. And it looked like I don't want to say the easiest thing in the world, but the just non-eventful testing, which is exactly what you'd like.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing that I had told Tad here about it, and I think I asked Tom about it, the GTRs are all-wheel drive. We just talked about that, with how you set them up for the track. How does that work that particular dyno can run
rear-wheel drive, yeah.
The rear tires and not the front tires? I mean, is that a function of the car? Is it something you can turn off, or how does that work?
So the trans is in the rear on these cars.
Okay.
And you've got, the main drive shaft goes from the engine to the transmission. And then inside this big transmission, you've got your main clutch, you've got all your gears, you've got the ring and pinion, the rear differential, and then you've also got the forward transfer gears and an electronic clutch that drives front torque. And then you've got a front drive shaft that goes back up to the front differential. And we can turn off the front torque, which is how we do a burnout, but the forward clutch still has a little bit of drag. So, the reality is, even when we do burnout, there's a very small amount of wear on the front clutch. So you wouldn't want to put it in rear-wheel drive mode and dyno it that way, because the whole time it would just be dragging on that forward clutch. Burnout's one thing compared to
doing poles, yeah.
Run. So we just pull the front drive shaft out.
Okay.
So the shaft that goes from the transmission back up to the front differential, you just pull a section of that out, and then there's no front drive at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one of us said that.
Yeah, well, I'm whatever, Tom. Dick. I mean, I was just, but forget the GTR side of things. From the hub dyno, I mean, that was amazing. And I think I said to you, I said it looked like it was just uneventful, and you said it made dynoing fun. It's no longer scary.
That's the fourth dyno I've owned. My first dyno was a DynoJet 248. Great piece of equipment. It was a DynoJet, right? Everybody's used DynoJet. They're consistent. They're reliable.
Yep, can't break them.
Everything was great on it. And then when I got the GTR, I knew that I could dyno the car's rear-wheel drive. Cobb was really one of the only engine management things we had at the time, right? So I needed to be a Cobb dealer so I could tune my car. And they said, well, you can't be a Cobb GTR tuner unless you have an all-wheel drive dyno. And I'm like, well, I can dyno it rear-wheel drive, or, Cobb Plano's 20 minutes from my shop. I could take the cars over there if I had to. And I got a lot of shit about it. And finally, they said, we'll sell you the dongle. It's $3,000 to be able to get the software to tune. They're like, but you can't tune any customers' cars until you get an all-wheel drive dyno. This is just for your car. I'm like, fine. You know, I've got a GTR. It's not like I'm going to take it somewhere else to get it tuned, so I have to be able to do this. So I did that, and then I started looking around for an all-wheel drive dyno, and I found a used mainline all-wheel drive dyno in California. And I drove out there, and I bought that and brought it back, and it was great. I loved everything about it. It was my first true eddy current load dyno. And, you know, back then, I mean, 700 or 800 horsepower was kind of a big deal in a GTR. So then an opportunity came along. I worked pretty closely with Mainline, really great guys over there. They said, you know, we've got a demo, brand new, the all-wheel drive 1800, whatever they call it. I mean, the biggest, baddest one that they have. And so worked out that I could get a pretty good deal on that. So I sold my dyno and bought that one, which was basically just a newer version of what I had. Had some different tie-down attachments and this hydraulic ram in the back that would, you know, really pull down hard on the car. So
those dynos, forgive me for interrupting, but those dynos they're just roller dynos. They're just eddy current rollers.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep. So, you know, as all this stuff happens, power keeps going up and up and up. And at the time when I bought my hub dyno, my car was making about 1,300 on the roller dyno. And I saw the hub dyno. I forget if it was at PRI or just on Mainline's website, but I'm like, whoa, what is it? What is that? And I got the first production unit in the United States, and put the car on there. And when I got it, we had just run a half-mile event in Austin. The car went 219 out there, and it was dialed in as good as I thought it could be. You know, it got to the point where every car I had on the dyno, I would tune it until it was spinning, and I couldn't quantify changes anymore, and go, okay, well, that's all I can do on the dyno, and so we can play with it on the track. But playing with stuff on the track to try to, like give it 2 degrees of timing, let's see what it does. There's so many variables when the car's on the track.
Yeah.
And, what if it didn't like it? I mean, you don't know until you just made a whole pass, and hopefully you didn't hurt anything. So I put it on the dyno from the 219 pass where I thought it was pretty dialed in, made like 1610, and without changing fuel, just optimizing the tune, I got it to like 1730 or something. Just from being able to see real changes from ignition timing, cam timing, lambda.
Oh, this is fast forwarding to the hub dyno.
Yeah, once I got the hub dyno, It changed everything. And it went from, being frustrating on the dyno because you couldn't really dial things in as good as they should be, and being scary. I mean, it feels like the car's going to fly off the dyno half the time. You've got, people in the trunk, and you've got straps pulling it down. I blew out a tire on the dyno one time just because I was trying to load it more to get more traction. So all that changed once we got the hub dyno, and now I enjoy tuning stuff again, and I can do a lot better job with it.
From the perspective, like, because that's a hub dyno and it is a brake type dyno, can you control the acceleration rate to say, like, let's say you were doing that, you were trying to simulate that pass that you made at the long event. Can you skew the acceleration rate so you can see the loading and temperature over time? Or is it just, because I mean, like with an acceleration dyno, you have just the mass to accelerate. That's it. That's all you have to work with.
Right. Yeah. You see a big power car on a dyno jet or something, it goes, it's done in 2 seconds.
Yeah. I don't know how you could ever get quantifiable data with that. I don't, or, data you could work with. I don't see how you could.
You can't really, you do the best you can with what you got, but the reality is there's a lot left. On this, you dictate the rate of acceleration. So that's also been really handy because I use the same rate of acceleration for everything I tune. So if I go back and I want to compare different turbos on different cars or different intake manifolds or anything like that,
that's a variable. It's out.
When you're dealing with a dyno jet or something, if you run a different gear or it made more power, it would wrap through quicker, so it would have less load in the mid range and it wouldn't make as much boost. But I start every car at like 2,000 RPM, and I can overlay and see really good comparisons from car to car. So that's been really handy too.
Yeah.
Now these individual wheel brakes, they're hydraulic. They're not eddy.
No, they are eddy.
They are eddy. Okay.
Yep. And I think you got on the last show there was some talk about how does it work with the different cars getting pissed off about that. At the end of the day, the left and right wheel speed needs to be the same. Otherwise, you're going to have differential problems or ABS. The electronics get mad on the car. Same goes for an all-wheel drive dyno, front and rear speeds. There's a lot of cars that if there's too much variation there, and it doesn't take much, that they'll go into a fault and they'll close the throttle or whatever. So that's the job of the electronics. The car is applying the load, and the dyno has to control that to maintain the same speed on front and rear or left and right in the case of the hub dyno.
And the mainline can do that very well.
Incredibly well.
Yes.
Yeah.
See that's
and
really,
there's no link. Like the DynoJet has a linked option.
Right.
To where the front and rear actually have this huge belt.
Right.
That's not an option with mainline, and some of the Porsches are really sensitive about that. And you could dyno any the 997 and 991 Porsche stuff, no problem. But it does a really good job of maintaining front and rear speeds.
So you just have 4 pods.
Yeah. So that's
right now for the hub stuff. There's only rear wheel drive. They hope to in the future make an all-wheel drive version, but it'll also be something you can upgrade a rear wheel drive one too.
Yeah, I would imagine that the control software gets a ton more complicated trying to make a lot happen.
Every car does the torque split stuff different.
Yeah.
And in the end, there's going to be some force driving the front, and so it's the dyno's job to then maintain that. But the other issue on the GTR specifically, we were talking about the clutch that drives the front. It's electronic, like 9-plate clutch. And if you have, say you had a big DynoJet or something, right? You got this big roller with a lot of mass to it, and you're making a lot of power. Now that front clutch has to be able to accelerate that big heavy mass, and it can only put so much torque to the front. So if you dyno GTR in all-wheel drive mode on a dyno that isn't linked and has a lot of mass on the front roller, you can actually wear the front clutch out because it's trying to keep up.
Oh yeah, it's trying so hard to move that mass. Yeah,
the same mass that the rear has no problem with.
Yeah,
right. So at big power, dynoing these things in rear-wheel drive, it's much better for the car. But if you had a DynoJet or anything where you're dynoing it in two-wheel drive, you just made your traction issue worse because now you got to put it all down through 2 tires instead of 4.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you. So the drive shaft's out. The manageability is really good. You get really good data. Your tune is clean. Everything's right. You take the car out. Obviously, the drive shaft's back in. The car behaves. I guess the electronics in the car then take over, and the car behaves like you would expect it to.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah, on the dyno, it doesn't care about any of that. It's looking at manifold pressures and air temperature and basic stuff. It doesn't care how many wheels you're driving or what the load is. So the tune doesn't change.
So nothing changes via load or anything when you put that front drive shaft.
All the rest of that stuff would be, power management, right? So you can't do that on the dyno anyway. That all has to be done on the track or on the street.
And have you seen a closer, relation of the data as observed on the dyno versus on track now that it's a hub? Does it get you closer? I guess what I'm trying to ask is how much final tuning does it seem to need once you're there racing versus where you ended up on the machine?
If you did your job right, pretty much none. When I'm at the track, I'm pulling data and I'm making changes every single. There's never 2 passes in a row without a change, right? Because there's always something that can be improved. So, but none of that really is tuning related unless I want to lean on it a little bit more. So, I can find out with the dyno what the optimum timing is, but do I want to run it there every pass? So, I might give it some more timing, but it's just going back to what I know works from the dyno rather than experimenting and seeing what the track gives.
Yeah, in a controlled environment.
Yep.
See, I come from the engine dyno side, and when I look, the chassis dyno side has always been kind of murky to me because I look at some of the things, like you said, like the guys piled up in the trunk, and tires and tire pressure and everything else. And I'm like, how could this work? How could you compare yesterday's number to today's number with tire temperatures and air pressures? And and then like I know how crucial engine temperature is in engine dyno testing. Like oil temperature is huge, and people will not realize that that's a metric that you have to measure all the time and make sure that you start your pull at the same place. You want to see the same amount of rise. It's important. Well, now you got you got trans fluid, you got rear fluid, you got tire temperature.
All of it.
There's so many variables there. I can't understand that, you put it all together, but it sounds like this thing takes a whole bunch of probably the biggest ones out the window. They're no longer there. That whole tire thing with the people in the trunk, that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Yeah. No, this hub dyno is basically an engine dyno without having to pull the shit out of the car, really.
That's really cool. And we've heard that, but we wanted to hear from you because we've heard that this thing is really the shit.
There's so many toys I want to buy.
I know.
It's terrible. I know. Can't talk to these guys.
In my whole time in the industry, that is the coolest piece of equipment I've ever worked with or owned. That thing, I couldn't do without it at this point. If I didn't have it, I would just stop tuning cars.
And it's cool because it's tucked away in a little corner, and you literally back the car in. It really doesn't take up that much room, right? And you just have fun.
Yes, so the dyno sits on a little track, right? And you just roll it into the car, and they're heavy. Those brakes they're huge. So the one I've got has 2 retarders per side, and the total width when it's all the way out, like you would pull the car in, it's like 25 feet. So it takes a lot of distance in that regard. But like a Dynapack, it doesn't have like the long snout that could get into like a Pro Mod rear end, right? It's real narrow. This does. So it's designed for Pro Mod stuff. So it goes in, and that adds to the overall width, but it also adds the capability. I remember I used a Dynapack one time at a friend's shop with an S2000. And you couldn't even open the door. Like the pod blocked the door from opening. So you either had to have the door open before you put the pod on, or climb over the door to get out of the car.
Yeah. So it sounds like they thought about this thing a lot before they finished it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
They did a good job with it.
I really like what he said because, I wouldn't tune cars anymore without this dyno. Well, that's kind of like, I don't like to build motors without the engine dyno being there. I never did anything that, left the engine stand and went to the customer. And like, Jeff's thing, my friend Jeff is here, and I put a motor together for him to help him out. And I was neurotic because you don't know.
Yeah. And then the thing blows up.
Yeah. Then you lose a lifter. Oh Christ. Don't even get me started. All right. Well, that sounds like a hell of a piece of equipment for sure.
We got to segue into Injector Dynamics too for a little bit.
We got to talk about Injector Dynamics, and I'd like to hear, how all this got started and what the relationship is. I think that it's a nice complementary thing altogether here.
Sure. So how did you two guys, I don't remember if Paul told us or not, but I want to hear your version anyway. How did you guys meet, and how did this thing all happen?
I've been a Motec dealer since I started the company, and was using Motec even before that a lot. And so at one point, I got an email that all the Motec dealers got about this guy at Yaw Power who was characterizing injectors. In the ECU, there's the place to put in this was back in the M48 and M800 days, where it was just an offset. That was all we had. You didn't even put flow rate into the ECU, but the offset's a big deal, and that was information that wasn't readily available. So when I rebuilt the Integra and I went from an M4 to an M800 ECU with staged injection, I had RC 1000cc injectors in there. And I called my buddy that worked at Motec, and I'm like, hey, do you have data on these? And he said, no, we don't. You're going to have to call RC. So I called RC, and I'm like, I have this injector. I need the offset for it. And it was like I called and asked them what kind of ice cream they like or something. They're like, why do you want to know that? I'm like, well, I'm trying to tune the car. He goes, well, what computer are you using? I was like, it's Motec. he said, "You're going to have to talk to them." I was like, "I already talked to them, and they don't have that information. It's your product." And they said, "Well, we don't have it either." It's like, okay.
So good luck.
So I called Simon at Motec, and I was like, what do you think I should do? He said, send them over to Paul, and to have them characterize them. It was $35 a piece or something, and they come back with full characterization. If it was a peak and hold injector, you'd have the peak and hold current settings and flow rate and offset and everything. So I sent them over there, and he said, "Yeah, I can do these." And he goes, I've got a 1,000 cc injector that's a lot better than these things if you want to give those a try. And I was like, send me some info on them. At the time, all I was doing was Honda stuff, right? So being 4-cylinder ethanol, we always needed big injectors. And, you just knew once you have to go over about 750 cc, things kind of started getting shitty pretty quick. So he says, I've got these 1,000 cc injectors that are high impedance, and it performs a lot better. And I said, you've got a 1,000 cc high impedance injector? Because I'd never heard of such a thing. And, I consider myself pretty in the know. So I was hearing this, and I'm like, why don't I know about this? And if it's really what you say it is, this could kind of be a big deal. So I bought a set, and I put it in my race car. But, being a race car with big cams, and it's not like you put an injector in and go, wow, this thing idles great, right?
Yeah.
So I put them in, and everything worked well. But, it's like, let me get one more set and put them in something else that I can tell better. So I bought another set, and I put them in a completely stock car. And, compared to even the 500 cc stuff we were using at the time, you had to run it richer than stoic so it wouldn't misfire to idle. And, their fuel ratios would just always bounce around on the gauge a little bit here and there. And I put these things in, and everything worked as if they were stock injectors. The car idle at stoic, rock solid. Everything was happy. And I was like, wow, this is a big deal. So I call him, and I said, what's the deal with these? Because Injector Dynamics wasn't anything at the time. This was Paul selling some modified Bosch injectors. And I said, how many of these can you get? And he said, I don't know. Let me make a call and see. I think I can get a couple hundred or so. And he calls me back. He's like, yeah, I can get some. I was like, send me 100 of them. How much can you do it, for 100 quantity? He's like, oh, fuck, I don't know. Let me look and see. So I bought 100, and I sent them to other tuners that I know that could be influential, but more importantly, could recognize the difference, because the end user who picks up the car from the tuner, they don't know what it took to make it do what it's doing.
Right.
So really, the tuners are the ones that are putting these things in and going, "Whoa, fuck! This is not like I'm used to." So word started traveling fast, and I ordered another 100, and then another 100, and then I was just calling them Bosch 1,000 cc injectors, and I didn't tell people where they're coming from, but people started figuring out where they're coming from, and then Paul starts getting all these calls, and he's like, look, I don't want to deal with all these people. I've been doing these things for a long time, but nobody wanted them until you put them out there, and you made all this happen. So how about I just send everybody to you, and you handle all of them, and I'll handle the manufacturing stuff? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a pretty good deal. So I think that was, 7 or 8 years ago now, and we decided that they needed to have a name, and he came up with Injector Dynamics, and I was like, I think that sounds pretty cool. So that was that, and here we are.
And this is on a handshake type thing.
Yep.
It's fucking crazy.
Yep. There's
still great people in the world.
Is a brand, and there's nothing but verbal agreement between he and I.
Now, this is just because for partially my curiosity. When we talk about the injector data, when we say that we need the data, like when you called the other company up for the injector data, what were you looking for, and what is the benefit to that? I have a pretty rough idea because I did talk to Paul before, but I just want to clarify. So like what data you're looking for, and what does it allow the computer to do that's different? Like what was the benefit here?
Okay. So, at the time it was very basic. Most systems now have more complex injector characterization. But back then we were just looking for the offset. And all that is a dead time, latency, offset, whatever you want to call it. And if that information is wrong, then the computer doesn't do what it's supposed to. So the computer goes, okay, we've doubled the amount of air going in the engine. Now we need to double the amount of fuel, right? So it could double the pulse width and double the fuel, except if the offset's wrong, you don't get that. You might get 110%, you might get 90%, but depending on which way the error is and how big the error is, you're going to get something other than what you're supposed to. So if you're doing with any system that's VE based, you might notice that your VE at idle is 30 or 110, and you're going, well, that's not right. Like, the engine can't be that far either direction.
Yeah.
So then usually injector characterization is wrong, and so that makes everything that's modeled wrong. So when all this stuff's right, everything falls into place and does exactly what it's supposed to. That is on the Ford, Chrysler, GM stuff. It's a huge deal because everything is modeled in there, and if the fuel flow's right, then the airflow, or if the fuel flow stuff's wrong, then the model around everything is wrong. If you have a dual clutch trans or an automatic trans, torque calculations are going to be wrong. Nothing works right. So it's kind of a big deal.
And the computer doesn't correct any of that stuff. That stuff is static, right?
Well, it's doing what it thinks is right.
Right.
But because you have bad, you got one variable bad, any calculation based off that is going to be wrong as well.
So why is it that some tuners, and I'm opening up Pandora's box here, why is it that some tuners say that it's not that important? Are they just idiots?
Yeah. It's ignorance. Well, I
got the answer I wanted.
Ignorance, but it's either ignorance or, they're that dumb. A long time ago, nobody even knew that you needed this data. Now everybody realizes why it matters, and it's been taken a lot further now. So instead of just having an offset based on battery voltage, you've also on the very low end of the injector, it's nonlinear. So now we have nonlinearization tables that are an offset adder or a percentage adder based on what the pulse width is, what the fuel pressure is, what the battery voltage is. So we've really, most ECUs now can do a really good job of characterizing that. And then you can go out there and go, if you're Shane, you just figure out what the VE of the engine's going to be and put the injector data in and send the car down the racetrack.
Wow.
But if the data's not right, none of that works.
And it's crazy how you would think that anybody who calls himself a calibrator would want that, and it would have to make their life easier.
Well, from the previous injectors, like if you just got a set, not having the data is bad. But here's my question: between, like, everybody always talks about matching a set of injectors, and I think what that used to be is that you would make sure that they flowed the same amount of fuel at like 50% duty cycle or something. But from the deeper characterization that you guys could do with the injectors, is there matching that goes on in that aspect too? Like, I mean, how much variance is there from one to another, and are they still batched, or is once you know the characteristic of that injector, are they all pretty close to one another?
So as far as our sets, and we don't even really talk about flow matching injectors anymore because everybody and their brother says they do the same thing. Right. And, what are we going to do? Buy injectors from other people and go, see, I told you it's not matched like you said it was. But we can't do that. So the reality is, back in the day, most people would flow match injectors. They do a static flow test and go, okay, this one flowed 950, this one flowed 970, whatever. So that gives you the static flow spread. But when you pulse the injector, now the offset comes into play. And the offset isn't the same from one injector to the next. So if you match based on slope and offset, then you can match all the way across the pulse width range. And all of our stuff is plus or minus 1% across the pulse width range. And that's a big reason why everything works so well. But like I said, it's something that everybody claims at this point. So we don't even talk about it.
Yeah.
But that's the matching of a set. Now, further than that, an ID 1000, for example, which was our highest volume injector before we replaced it with the 1050X. The ID 1000, the static flow rate, the average was 1,015 cc's per minute. Any injector that we sold as an ID 1000 would be no more than 2.5% high or low from that, right? So if you did calibration data with a mid-flow set of injectors and you sent that tune to somebody and said, here, buy this injector, you're going to be good, they could be no more than 2.5% off. And, you know, the reality is from car to car and fuel system to fuel system, there's much bigger variables than that. So that allowed us to work with these, you know, people that were providing, here's a turbo kit, here's the ECU calibration, plug this in, you're done, right? And we get a lot of injectors that fall outside of that range. And so when we do, we set them aside. They're laser etched as off-spec injectors. And, you know, we usually have quite a few that are 4 to 5% outside of that spec of, you know, 2.5% plus or minus. And by doing that, we keep the product quality up. Everybody who buys an ID 1000 is going to be within a couple percent of what that is. And the data is going to work. You know, the further you deviate from that, the more the data is going to be an error. It's not reasonable for us to provide the full data sets that we provide for each set of injectors. The injectors would cost 4 times what they do now if that was required. So it's representative average data. We keep the spec tight so that data applies usefully to the injectors that you get. And then the other stuff that falls out of spec, I mean, we get, you know, Formula SAE guys or, you know, somebody, hey, I work at this shop and I'm working on this personal project. You guys have, you know, we save them for stuff like that.
Yeah, as long as the people know what they're getting, they're fine.
Right, right.
See, now that I got to tell you, Tone, that explanation was drilled down to anybody could understand it, and because I understood it, and I'm not that bright. So
we could argue.
You know, our listeners will appreciate that because that all made perfect sense.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, and that's I think, see, from the people that don't do the tuning perspective, that are not the tuners or would like to be tuners, they start to hear all these terms. They hear terms like offsets, and they hear, you know, I mean, yeah, you can't educate everybody on everything, but I didn't.
Yep.
For me, did not understand, and I still don't. There's so much more from when I came from the DFI. You know, I can't even remember what generations they were. That, you know, you put a number in a box. That's all it was. There wasn't a lot of stuff there. Now all this is new, so I'm sure there's a lot of people like myself that were wondering what is the real information behind that. So I think that clears it up for a lot of of people that are not deep into this.
Yep.
Good.
So you are still. I'm switching back to GTR for 1 second because I want to know. You're still doing a bunch of engines. Are you still doing overseas stuff, or has that slowed down a bit? Yeah.
No. Yeah. It's every time I pick up an engine from my machine shop, I drop another one off. There hasn't been a time where I haven't had an engine in process in years now. So there's always a line. There's always stuff going on. We still do a lot of engines overseas. We do a lot of engines here. Yeah, we do a lot of engine stuff.
All right. And what is the plan for? I know you bought a 17 GTR, and I'm assuming you left it kind of alone, right? I know you did some stuff to it, but is it almost stock?
It makes 1,400 horsepower.
Oh, so it's
it's stock.
Oh my God,
it's not very much stock.
You truly are a big. You're a big child.
The race car, it's a race car, right? So I can't. If we have a new computer strategy or, you know, new anything to test, it's a big ordeal. I can't just take the car out on the street. And I wanted something to showcase what we could do on a street level, because we still do that kind of stuff. And yeah, I tell people all the time, basically what I built the 17 to, 1,500 horsepower in that range, I consider that kind of the ultimate street car. It's at a power level with the technology that we have now that it can be very reliable. I drove the car to the track on drag radials. I made one pass, went 860 at 170 miles an hour. got kicked off the track, drove it back home an hour. You know, like it's just a ridiculously fast, fun street car. It's got mild cams in it. It's got, you know, small injectors. It idles like a champ. The car, it's enjoyable to drive. And when you modify cars, sometimes they pretty quickly go from being enjoyable to being a race car.
Yeah.
And they're fast, but they're not pleasant to drive.
Yeah, we've all had them.
Yeah, kids' cars.
They suck.
I always call them kids' cars.
Yeah, they just suck.
So that's what that one is.
You know, I kind of wanted to tell the story about the, well, I was going to save you the embarrassment, but by starting off, it's not going to. Didn't you? You have another car that's pretty cool, and you lost a key fob to it, didn't you?
Yeah, so I bought a Ferrari 458, and it only came with one key when I bought it. And at some point, the key disappeared, and the car was in the garage. The battery was dead. Key was missing. And I'm like, shit. Like, I called Ferrari, and they said, yeah, you got to have, you know, either the key or the key card, and you got to bring it up here and find another key, and we got to program it to the car. And I'm like, well, like, it's in the garage. I can't even, you know, unlock the steering column or anything. They said, well, you can buy a key once you provide proof of ownership and go through all this shit, and buy the key, and that'll allow you to unlock steering column and have a tow truck bring it up here, and then we can reprogram the mobilizer. So I said, I'm going to find it. It's here somewhere, right? So I waited a couple months and then went, all right, I guess it's gone. So I ordered the key, get the key. I haven't brought it up there yet to get it programmed. And then, I don't know, probably 3 weeks later, we tore into the 2017 to start the build. I hear all this commotion in the shop from my desk, and I'm like, I don't know if this is good or bad. Terrence comes running in the office, and he's got a Ferrari key in his hand. It was in the center console of the 2017.
Oh, shit.
So
Right where you
now I
last
have
left
two
it.
keys, and only one of them works.
And it was a substantial amount of money, if I remember. You don't have to say it, but it was.
It was $1,000 for the key.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was,
Now you
I
have spare.
got lucky, and the previous owner it comes with this a key card. It's got numbers for the key and the immobilizer and stuff. And he had taped it to one of the inside pages of the owner's manual. And I couldn't find it. And I remember I was in the office, and I was on the phone with somebody, and I was just, you know, talking, and I just started flipping through the manual, and I found the key card in there. And I got so excited because I was told it would be like $6,000 or $7,000 if you didn't have the key card.
Holy God.
So it's like I just found $6,000 in my office.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I
Now
think-
I have these little tile things on my keys.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
yeah. So you can't lose them.
I think the last thing, and this is a personal interest, I read on your About Us page, shifter carts. They are like the coolest thing in the world.
Oh, yeah. It's Formula One off season.
There's
Yeah.
there's a track 20 or 30 minutes from the shop called Dallas Karting Complex. And they opened up, and their rental carts will go like 55 or 60 miles an hour. They're fast. And we went out there one time, and I rode the rental car, so I was like, wow, this is probably more fun than I've had in cars in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I started looking into the shifter cart stuff, and it's like, you know, you could buy like a really nice one for $4,000 or $5,000. And, you know, coming from race cars, $4,000 or $5,000, it's really cheap.
Yeah, yeah.
The maintenance is almost nothing, you know, tires are cheap. And so Ben Strader's buddy actually raced this cart for a year. It was his ex-race cart, and, you know, they built a new one for the next year. And so I bought it for, I don't know, $4,800 or something. And it was just, it was stupid fast. It went from on the rental carts, you know, trying to hold a good line and do a good job driving around the track, to just trying to fucking stay on the track. the shifter carts are so fast, and, you know, you shift 50 times a lap or something. It's ridiculous.
How
I
fast is it?
took it out a few times, but I don't know. I never make time to go out there.
How fast are they?
Mine didn't have a speedometer, but I was under the impression it would hit between 90 and 100 miles an hour on the
Yeah.
straight.
Wow.
It was fast.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right on the ground, so it's got to feel fast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're on the ground, no suspension. The heats were 10 minutes long,
Oh,
and I had a lap timer on there, and so I would keep track of my times, and man, like 5 or 6 minutes in, I couldn't push anymore, and so the car just starts slowing down, and you're literally sitting on the ground. So I'd come in after 10 minutes and not even have the energy to be able to push myself up out of the seat. Like it was such a beating.
Wow.
And it takes so much out of you to drive those things that you would never think, but they're very unique things.
So is Paul working on suspension for shifter cards now?
So they don't have any suspension, and they actually have bars that mount in the front, and based on how you load your body, it affects how the car turns. So there's a lot to it, but there's no actual suspension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all flex.
Yeah, well, I knew that, but I was figuring, that would be right up Paul's alley.
And what displacement are the ones that you guys race out there?
The one I had was a 125.
Yeah.
Well, so that's big.
The rental carts, I don't know what they are. They're just, single speed.
Yeah, E-Town's got them.
Things.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
No, they are amazing little vehicles, and like Tony said, they're so much fun.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
We should buy them. Just another thing to do.
Another thing to do. But yeah, you got to have somewhere to go. I mean,
Mike, you could have paid a track in back of this place.
Yeah, not a chance, dude. This is enough room. Now, Englishtown, I think, does them too.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, right in the side track.
Close enough.
Side parking lot, that is.
Well, Tom, listen.
They're fun. It's a lot of work between you got to bring it out there, right? Or they had a place where you can just like rent a space and leave it there, so you just show up and race it. But there's no, you got to push start the thing, so you can't even just go out there by yourself and play, really. So it ended up being a lot more of an ordeal that it was pretty inconvenient, and it sat on a pallet rack here for a few years, and I just sold it to one of my guys for $1,000. I was like, you give me $1,000, you can have it, but it can't stay here. I'm tired of looking at it.
Go have fun.
Yeah, that's one of those things that when you got it, you actually have to go to the races and like race in an organized, like it's an effort. Like you make sure that it's, you're not just doing it to go have fun. You're doing it for competition. And then, it becomes another job. That's for sure. But they are amazing little vehicles. If nobody's ever really looked at them.
Yeah, they are.
They're nuts.
All right. Well, Tone, listen, I want you to plug yourself, plug your deal. It was a pleasure having you. We don't want to kill your whole Sunday. So tell us how to get in touch with you or what the listeners should do.
So our website is t1racedevelopment.com. There's a Facebook page there that's also the same. Email or phone, it's all our contact info is on the website. So that's probably the easiest way to figure everything out.
Okay.
Find us there.
I'm going to bug you for one last thing. A guy who's a good help to the show, Kevin, and I know that I kind of had a little bit of this too.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain the basic, like this is, and again, the basic side of things, because people that know the GTR is a stick, but not a stick. And could you just explain the basic functioning of that? Like what takes place to change a gear and what it really is? Because people have a hard time with this blurred line between an automatic and an actual stick with a pedal.
Yeah, I have no idea. John Shepard sprinkled some magic in there, and it just all worked.
Yeah, he's got dust and
yeah.
Yep.
No, so it's a dual clutch transmission, which you're starting to see them a lot more and more, and it's going to continue that direction because it's a great idea. Whoever came up with it. So you have 2 input shafts and 2 clutches. So one input shaft drives even gears, one input shaft drives the odd gears. So when you're driving in first gear, the transmission is also in second gear, but that clutch is disengaged. And so the reason they shift so fast and they have so much potential is
they're already in gear.
What we call a gear change is actually just a clutch swap. So it's a hydraulic, clutch changeover. And at that, you've got this computer handling every aspect of that. I mean, if you break it down and look at how much stuff's going on in there, that's an accomplishment in itself, making that thing always do the right thing, always go into the right, just drive nice, right? You get an automatic where it downshifts too early or, does all these things wrong. That you can make a GTR do all the same stuff if things aren't right. But in the end, it's just 2 input shafts, 2 clutches, one drive shaft coming in. And so whichever gear you're in, that clutch is engaged. So we have to reduce torque on a gear change just to help bring the other clutch in. But there's really no time off power.
Yeah, but imagine you could make the disruption. I mean, granted, you're having an engine RPM change, but I would imagine that the disruption of power it would be minimized ridiculously.
Yeah, when you look at G's on a data log, if you have it all right, it's pretty much seamless.
No dip. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, I'm curious about one thing too, real quick. So, are they centrifugal? Like when you're taking off from a lighter, or from stopped? Is it centrifugal?
It's all hydraulic. So they're multi-plate clutches.
So it's a computer releasing the clutch.
Yep.
Okay.
So a factory DTR clutch has 7 plates on A and then 7 on B, and then like our big stuff, we're up to 13 per. So it's 26 total clutch discs.
Wow.
And all it does is you've got solenoids that regulate oil pressure to the clutch. So the oil pressure is the clamp on the clutch.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure like if you look at that and you look at like the parts for them, you kind of get an idea what's going on because there's pairs of automatic transmission baskets.
A lot of shit going
on. Like it or a motorcycle clutch, however, whatever connects that set of dots in your mind.
Another great explanation. Yeah. Paul Yaw is going to have to take notice of this show of how to explain things.
Yeah, there's so many pieces inside there. Normal trans, whether it's an automatic or manual, you got a handful of parts, but you've got valve bodies, gears, clutches, and in the case of the GTR specifically, the forward clutch is in there. There's drop gears. There's the ring and pinion, the rear differential. Like it's all contained in the transmission. So you'll hear stuff every now and then. Oh yeah, GTRs, the transmission's unreliable, and there's all these transmission problems. And the reality is they're very well sorted. I mean, the fact that we can go down the track with more than 2,500 horsepower on this transmission, that it's got beefed up gears and clutches and whatnot, but the core of it is still Nissan parts designed and it works. That's really impressive in itself. But there's so many pieces inside there that you can have a clutch pressure sensor fail, and it's an OE part that you can't even buy. So it doesn't matter. Somebody might spend $35,000 on a transmission and go, this thing's never going to break, right? I bought the best of the best. And then you get a solenoid fails or a pressure sensor fail. Like it's never. There's so many pieces in there that the trans kind of gets a bad rep, but it's really not. They're not unreliable.
No, it's an amazing piece.
I watched a special on them building the GTR transmission, and the guys are actually sitting in there with masks on their face to keep any particles from coming out and going in the transmission as they're building them. It's like Jesus.
I'm sure that's what Shep does too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The clean room.
We all walk around the shop with masks on.
Yeah. I know.
But they had that. It was a positive pressured room, all air going out, everything.
Yeah,
booties on the feet, the whole deal.
Yeah, T1, the whole building is positive pressure.
Big 10 over it.
They float around in there.
Boost. You got a big turbo on the outside.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Well, hey Tone, thanks again, man. We great job, and it was great to have you. And that's all I could do is say thanks.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah,
all right, man.
Thanks.
Enjoy
Tony.
the rest of your day.
Doing what you're doing.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Another great guy.
That was rather interesting explanations.
Yeah. I didn't know the 2 clutches were odd and even gears.
Volkswagen, well, not Volkswagen, Audi was first, and Volkswagen owns Audi.
Oh, you knew this all of a sudden?
Yeah. I don't want to interrupt, but I'm reasonably sure they're the ones
this
that
whole
came out
time
with
we were wondering about this trans, and we could have just
Tad
asked Tad.
Yeah, I know.
And he could have told us how to assemble a White Castle double cheeseburger.
Hey,
all
that's
at the
special.
same-
That's secret
in
information.
one night, we could have got
All that
God,
information.
you're risking my connection with my managers at White Castle, man.
Hey, next Monday, forget about Kenny Duttweiler. We're gonna have Tad on.
Remember, I don't like pickles either, so.
Okay.
So those
Viper.
those things, the way they work is they, I guess, alternate clutch pack depending on what they need to drive, and then it's application and release to just keep things.
Yeah, well,
nice and smooth.
he said when you're in first, second's working,
It's already in gear.
alongside. Yeah, it's already in gear. Just no clutch apply.
And I guess that's why the programming and the logic behind it gets so tough, because it has to know, what are you possibly going to do next?
Yeah.
Because if you're in the throttle a little bit and you're accelerating,
then
you rolled out of the throttle just a little bit, does that mean you're going to go down, or are you going to get back on the gas and have to go back up again? So, I mean, are there gear changes that occur and they say, oh, wait a minute, I fucked that up. He's going to go this way.
Think about those maps.
Yeah.
Well, you remember anything when people are test driving in road and track and stuff, they're complaining about how abrupt the transmission is on this new car because they haven't sorted out the whole deal.
I remember Clarkson saying that he hated like almost every, they call them flappy gearboxes, because they're always confused and they move away. Like you watched, I can't remember, it might have been one of the Lamborghinis that was pulling away from somewhere. And you see the thing like shudder and lurch. Yeah. Like when it,
I don't know. The GTR never did that for me.
No, I've heard about the Lamborghinis being abusive.
And I hear the Acura. I hear they got it pretty down too. You know, you can get it in an Acura TL, and
that's a Honda, so of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what's the efficiency benefit over a planetary? No torque converter. Sure.
So heat, direct drive, clutch is locked up. Although you can lock up a converter, but
and everybody's doing 7 speeds and 8 speeds and stuff like that now too.
Yeah, but these things, like realistically, nothing's really direct drive anymore when you're driving down a highway.
One gear is, but
no,
why not?
Well, they end up being in 6th or 7th or however many gears something has.
Yeah, but it's locked up. I didn't mean direct drive. I mean locked up.
Yeah.
They're locked up better. Yeah, and locked up more. You know, a lockup converter in an automatic car is, typically at 2,200 RPM going down the highway.
Well, look, I think forever, unless it's probably gotten better, when you were looking at things like how fast something would go in a quarter mile, if the thing was a stick versus an automatic, you'd automatically give the stick a couple mile an hour.
Right.
When you're trying to figure it out. So.
Well, when I was on one of your YouTube loops today, I saw one where they raced the newest McLaren against the Tesla Model X, the minivan looking thing, and the minivan beat the McLaren. They said the reason was the McLaren, you can't open the back engine compartment to cool the engine, so it was gaining in heat every race, and they couldn't put fans on it.
Yeah, and you couldn't drive that stupid fucking golf cart to Florida from here.
You can't do the McLaren either. You got to pull over.
Week. Yeah, you got to pull over and put gas in it.
But
like every other car.
I also got one, the new Fisker. Yeah. That's coming out, the Beauty or whatever. It's supposed to have a 9-minute charging time.
Oh my God!
Did you really have to do that? Because now I have to take.
He's got to edit now.
It's Tad. Look,
it's coming, man.
And that's fine. And all you idiots can do that.
Fisker.
I'll give you the same thing. First off, I don't believe there's any batteries on the market right now that can charge in 9 minutes. I don't think there's any. I mean, that is going to be the holy grail when they can do that. When you can charge an electric car as fast as you can charge, or fill a gasoline powered car, that's when everything will change.
He was showing it looked like a freaking sandwich bag that thin. He goes, "This is the new battery." You're like, "What the hell?" So, but he didn't explain what was in it or anything like that.
The cutting edge battery technology is not going to happen in a car first.
Yeah,
there's a million other things that are.
It's going to be military. It's going to be
there's
space
things, and phones. I mean, everything. There's things that are much more.
Well, Samsung already proved that, right?
Well, yeah, perfect example. But what I'm saying is there's going to be places that when the batteries are coming to be, they're not going to be in cars first.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you people like electric cars, God bless you. I don't. I ain't never going to have one.
Same.
I don't think they're cool. I mean, I know that.
And our industry is going to take a shit too, so.
Yeah, what are we going to do? You're going to take your engine to the custom winder to put new,
Well, remember the RC cars. That's how it was. So the brushless and.
I'm sorry. We all, grew up and found girlfriends and don't need to play with RC cars anymore.
True.
I'm sorry. I can't get into those things, and I'm not trying to hate on them.
And wait till they come out with Cathedral Port batteries.
Oh, God.
I just saw another Cathedral Port Mafia page, but anyway.
Get about it.
All right. So, I don't know. Monday, next week.
Hopefully we'll have Duttweiler.
Hopefully Kenny Duttweiler.
I got to drive down to Cape May.
Are you leaving right from here?
You picking them up?
Okay.
Picking up my wife and going.
All right.
My kids are down there already.
No, they couldn't.
Better hurry up. Somebody else will pick up your wife.
Yeah, I know.
They couldn't stand the trip down there with you?
No, we got to have 2 cars down there. They're older.
Is that the electric car down there?
Killing me. When did you get so chatty?
I don't know, but the worst thing is I can't make up my mind what I wanted. Do I want him to shut up or do I want him to talk?
Yeah, I know. You can't yell at him because he never talks.
The talking's kind of worse.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll be back not this Monday, but the following Monday because this Monday.
This Monday's today.
Yeah, maybe Kenny Duttweiler next time. See ya.
We'll see.